Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet. Welcome to the Lit Round Table. I'm Anna.
And I'm Joseph, and today will be your wise or not so wise mentors for today's audio adventure, where we discuss all things storytelling, and in particular, today, we get to talk about redemption arcs.
We've been dancing around the edge of this in several episodes, so I'm excited to actually get into it.
It's definitely come up before, like when we talked about, I think we talked about morally gray characters. Whenever Darth Vader comes up.
Yes. Or Gollum.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of different redemption arcs in media. People love a good redemption arc. So
I love a good redemption arc, personally.
Yeah. So we're going to be getting into that today. But first, we'll just go over, well, actually, I should mention first that we are only a couple, we'll have a couple videos left for Light of the Midnight Stars. So if you would like to get in on voting for the next book that we read, go check out our Patreon, subscribe. The $5 tier, the lowest tier, will give you voting rights. But if you want to do the $10 tier, you'll also get access to an exclusive bonus video that we make once a month. And you can listen to Anna make a new character for the One Ring campaign.
Yeah.
Just in case hers bites the dust. So go check that out if you want to get in on the voting for the next book we read for the read along. But anyway, now that's out of the way, we'll just go over what our usual stuff. So what you watching?
Well,
before I answer something else to add.
Well, before I answer that, do you know what our books are going to be for the poll? Have you decided? You don't have to say. I'm just curious if you know.
I know what a few of them are going to be. I don't know what the whole list is, though. How many is it usually?
I usually do 4.
Okay. Alrighty. So, I think I have 2 in mind, so I'll think of 2 more.
Okay, cool.
So.
Very good.
So yeah, what you watching, what you reading, what you playing?
Not playing anything but the One Ring.
Fair.
Which is very fun. For reading, I just finished On the Banks of Plum Creek, so we are about to start By the Shores of Silver Lake by Laura Ingalls Wilder, so that's very exciting. We just had our last book club for Plum Creek, so that was good.
Nice.
Of course, we're still reading Light of the Midnight Stars by Rena Rossner. I just finished reading The Library of Lost Things by Laura Taylor Namey. And that book was, it's a YA romance.
I feel like I've seen that come up before, maybe on TikTok or something.
Maybe. It was very good. It did a nice job of covering some OCD behaviors, like hoarding.
Oh, interesting.
And the main character is a super book nerd. And there's a lot of allusions to Peter Pan, and I thought it was really well done. It was very, very good. Would recommend. And then I just started Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa, I'm not going to say her last name correctly, Bashardoust. It'll be in the description.
Okay.
But it reminds me a lot of the Rin Chupeco books I read, whose names are escaping me. Oh, The Bone Witch, that series.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me of that in the sense that it has a similar setting of Asian culture. So I'm not very far, but so far it's very interesting.
Cool.
And then for watching, Critical Role Campaign 2, where am I at on that? They're doing a job for the gentleman again, I think. The
gentleman.
And then also Campaign 3, which Oh my gosh. So many emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I
The last episode was a doozy.
It
But it was
was.
really good. It was my favorite so far.
I agree with that. Bouncing back to campaign 2, I did want to mention that I got a big Caleb lore dump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. That boy.
Tragedy.
Oh, I just want to hug him. But I've mostly just been watching Critical Role. But I did also start watching Spy X Family on Crunchyroll. Or do you just say
is that good?
Spy Family? Do you say the X? I never know with Hunter x Hunter either if you say the X.
It's just Hunter x Hunter. I bet it's just Spy Family.
It's very good. Would recommend. I may have to start collecting the manga.
Oh, wow.
Because it's very good.
Is that good, huh?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I mean, it's just starting, and I'm like, I'm going to be real bummed when this season ends, and I don't get more of the story. So,
yeah. That's how they get you.
It totally is. That's how I ended up with over 30 volumes of My Hero Academia.
And Yona of the Dawn.
I only have 3 volumes of Yona of the Dawn, but just you wait. I will end up with more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Anyway, that's all I got. So what are you reading and watching and playing?
So, what I'm watching, Hope and I are still watching Star Wars movies while we make dinner, and we just watched episode 3.
Nice.
Which was fun and dark and tragic.
Is it still your favorite?
Fun. Yeah, man. The music.
The music is really good.
The memes.
Yeah.
That's been really good. Also, we are still watching Assassination Classroom. We haven't watched it in a little bit because like Anime Night hasn't synced up the way it usually does, but Assassination Classroom. We've also, Hope and I have been like our lazy show when it's like, I don't know what we're going to watch. We've just kind of had Hunter x Hunter on in the background, and that's been fun. I forgot how much I love that show. It's so good.
So good.
Still my like top tier anime.
It's so
favorite.
Good.
It's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And so I actually started watching a new anime, but it's an oldie, but it's very well known.
Okay.
I started watching Naruto.
Oh.
Because it was on Netflix, and I was like, okay. And then I started it, and I'm on episode 25.
Okay, so it's good, obviously.
No, yeah, it's good.
Okay. Well, and it's also
it's definitely like dated. It definitely feels like 2002.
Okay.
But you know, it's fine. It's been really fun. Yeah, I like it a lot. It's kind of funny seeing like some of the anime tropes that have survived this long still happening in Naruto from 2002. It's just kind of funny. But no, it's been really good. And I have also been watching Critical Role, Campaign 3, and that's been going really well. And also, there's a new thing coming out with Critical Role. It's a new EXU mini-series called Calamity. Yeah. And I am super pumped, also because Brenna Lee Mulligan is going to be the DM, and I love him so much. So I am very, 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 very excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Are you still watching... doesn't he have like another campaign that he leads all the time?
He has other D&D stuff that he does. I haven't like been regularly watching. Like I was watching Fantasy High for a little bit.
Right. I couldn't think of what it was called.
Yeah. But mostly I see like clips of him doing stuff on TikTok, and he's just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. He's so funny. But anyway, I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited for when you watch it. Like when you watch it and then you finish the rest of campaign 2, I'm curious to see if there's any tie-ins that you notice.
Because it'll be fresh for me, or?
Yeah. Like going into campaign 2, because I'm wondering if there are things that'll be mentioned. Anyway.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's what I've been watching. For reading, obviously, Light of the Midnight Stars for the read-along. I've also been reading Shadow of the Gods, which I think I brought up last time,
Mm-hmm.
which is that Norse slash Germanic, like Viking style. It's kind of a Viking revenge story, and it's given me a lot of Skyrim vibes. Like Skyrim mixed with Grimm, like the
Hmm.
TV show Grimm, because
Mm-hmm.
there are people called Vaesen who are like tainted with the blood of the old gods, and they can like turn into monsters and stuff. And I'm like,
That sounds like Light of the
wow,
Midnight Stars, too.
kind of, but they can't like change into any animal.
Except that Prince Theodore can.
No, I mean the people in Shadow of the Gods
Oh.
can't turn into any. They're like specifically descended from like the wolf god, and they're like wolfy,
Oh, gotcha.
like a blutbad from
Gotcha,
Grimm.
gotcha. I
Anyway, but that's
misunderstood
been
you.
really good. Or no, actually, that's not the Vaesen. They're just tainted. The Vaesen are just other monster things. Anyway, it's kind of like Skyrim and The Witcher and Grimm. It's really cool. So that's been really fun. But also, I just got with my Audible credit Words of Radiance, which is the second Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archive book, which I've like read a little bit of the beginning, but I haven't like dived into it. But I'm looking forward to picking that series back up. And that's pretty much it for reading. And for playing, I'm still playing Bloodborne and Lego Star Wars. And we just finished episode 2 in Lego Star Wars. So we're on to episode 3 now.
Wow.
Um, it's a big game. It's going to take a while to finish that one. But also, I did get for free with some coupons from GameStop. I got on the Switch. I got Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Rogue. It was like a twofer thing, and I ended up getting it for free with coupons. And I was like, you know what, that'll be fun because I've heard that's like one of the best Assassin's Creed games, and it's piratey, and I like piratey things. And we're
Yeah.
going to a Ren Fair on Sunday, so it'll get me in the mood.
You just
Listen to
reminded me of.
sea shanties.
I love that. You just reminded me of something. So you reminded me in book club today, one of my kiddos goes, before book club started, so like it's like our pre-talk, they were like, we watched a new movie, which they often share, like books they're reading and movies they watch, whatever. I go, oh, yeah, what was that? And she goes, I think it was a pirate movie. I think it was called Black Pearl, maybe. And I was like, is it live action or is it animated? Because they watch a lot of animated movies. It was live action. I go, oh, what was it about? And then she gives me it's about pirates, and they're trying to get a coin, and there's like skeletons. And I go, oh, you watch Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Wow.
And she was like, oh yeah, that was it. It was very cute. And I was just like, I'm glad that people are still watching that movie with their kids because it's so good.
It's
But
one of the best pirate movies ever.
oh, it's so good.
It's very good.
Yeah, but you reminded me of that because you're swashbuckling video games. But anyway, sorry to interject with a little kid story, but it was really cute. Made me happy.
Yeah. So there's that, and also still playing The One Ring. Got to resolve a little bit of the cliffhanger last time we played. I mean, more things were explained.
I mean, technically, my character has no idea what's going on, and we ended on a pretty serious cliffhanger.
Most of them
but,
don't.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
I keep
for me.
hoping that by asking where my horse is, that it's going to like trigger me to like wake up for a second. Because in the thing, we're in a dream. We're like in a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so, but it
There's
hasn't.
some dark magic at foot.
Right. And Eliadis, one of the other characters, like came out of it for a second because of injury.
But the only reason that she knows
hasn't happened.
Yeah, the only reason that she knows that it's a dream is because of her elvishness.
Okay, so I can't
otherwise,
trigger myself to wake up and.
I mean, you can try next session.
I mean, I'm just gonna keep asking where my horse is and being confused about my horse being gone, even though.
No, that's valid.
I know my horse is gone, but anyway,
it's like a part of you.
Yeah,
it's missing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for playing, though. So
it was a really fun session. This last one. I mean, they've all been really fun, but I'm very
weird stuff happening.
Well, exactly. It's weird stuff that I'm like, this is Lord of the Rings, but it's also like not. And so I'm just very curious about
it's expanded.
What's happening? Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the topic of today, which is redemption arcs.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, really quick, I'm going to list off some popular, well, some of them might not be necessarily popular, but some of them are. Some redemption arcs that I thought of while I was doing this. And then if you think of any that I missed that you're a really big fan of, you can let me know. And a redemption arc is just basically, for those of you that don't know, even though I'm sure you all do, basically when a character does something that makes up for past wrongs or past actions that hurt other people, or that kind of thing. So they're trying to have like a change in like they're trying to change so that they can make up for past actions that were wrong, that they now realize were wrong, is kind of how I
sure
it's
usually a whole journey. Like a lot of what the observer will see is them in a position of like being the antagonist or a villain of some kind, until they're redeemed in the end, until they realize the wrongness of their ways and turn away from that. So.
And a well done redemption arc will make sense, and you will like understand all their motivations about why they're going back to being a good guy again.
Right.
If you don't do that, the audience will be very confused. But these are some redemption arcs that I thought of. So one of them, the first one, of course, is Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker. Classic. Also, kind of mirroring that is Kylo Ren / Ben Solo.
Right.
Of course, it's basically kind of the same. There's also, this is a deep cut, so I want to see your reaction to this one. Sir Guy from the BBC Robin Hood show.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Of course I remember Richard Armitage as Sir Guy of Gisborne.
Yeah, dude.
I'm surprised you remember it.
Me too. It was a really random thought, but I was like, oh yeah. His character, like in that Robin Hood show, he totally becomes a good guy at the end and renounces Prince John and all that. So
yeah, just barely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. You're right. Okay. I dig it. Spike from Buffy. Okay, you said Spike, and my brain went to Land Before Time and the dinosaur, and I was like, "What are you talking about, man? Spike is forever a good guy."
No, Spike.
Buffy, yes.
And technically Angel too, but we don't really like see his like redemption, because he like comes in as a good guy, even though he used to be a bad. So
post redemption.
Right. Steve Harrington from Stranger Things, because in the beginning of season 1 he was a total butt and had terrible friends, and he eventually started helping the good guys out.
Yeah.
And now he's a fan favorite. He's best buds with all the other kids.
Yeah.
Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Boromir from Lord of the Rings. So, like, when he sacrifices himself to protect Merry and Pippin, even though they get captured anyway. He tries. Yeah. So,
are you going to list any others from the Lord of the Rings? Because I think there's another one.
No, I didn't have any other ones.
I think Theoden...
Okay, there's... Oh, okay. Yes, go on.
I was just going to say, I think Theoden deserves to be in the list of redemption arcs.
Yeah, because he was trying to make up for his time being, like, low-key possessed by Saruman. Yeah. he had something to prove.
He did.
And he did at the end. There is one more Lord of the Rings one, and that's Gollum, Smeagol, but it's kind of weird. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
Because in the end, he still goes for the ring.
Which ends up being for the good of everyone. But
yeah. But I think that part of him genuinely, like the Smeagol part of him genuinely was good, but I just think that the Gollum side won out in the end. Is kind of how I think it probably has something to do with just how powerful the ring was in its ability to corrupt. It just had such a hold.
Right. The only of the three people that were in Mount Doom at that moment, the only one that had any kind of resilience and resistance to the ring was Sam. Mm-hmm. Both Frodo and Gollum were full on all about the ring again. Because it was such a desperate act for the ring. So, yep.
So, there's that. This one is controversial. And it's all just because of the ending. And that is Jaime Lannister. Okay, if we forget about the last season, he actually does have a redemption arc, from season 1 to season whatever. He does kind of see the light and realize that, oh, maybe my family's... what if we're the bad guys?
Well, not what if, we are the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they ruined it. But yeah, okay.
They did.
Yeah.
They definitely did. But
if you don't count the last season, sure.
Literally just like the last 1 or 2 episodes, and it would have been fine.
Right.
So jumping into the MCU, Loki. He had a bad guy streak, and pretty much all of the Loki show is Loki Redemption arc. Oh, well, arguably all of the shows everything that he shows up in after the first Avengers movie where he was the villain is kind of Loki Redemption arc.
He's complicated because he kind of waffles back and forth depending on what serves his purpose. Mm-hmm.
But where he stands now, though,
yes,
it's definitely redemption. He's trying to do better.
Sure.
I think they've kind of retconned that too. Like that wasn't the plan in the beginning, I'm sure, but now what they're saying is like the staff that he had in Avengers like affected his mind, and that's like part of the reason why he was psycho. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, okay, if you want to say that like for the story purposes, fine, but if it's a retcon, just call it a retcon. Like, it's fine. I don't mind.
Right.
Just be honest about it.
Just call it audible. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think that you could say that Tony Stark also gets a redemption arc in the first Iron Man movie, because the beginning of that movie, he's kind of despicable. Yeah,
he's the worst.
And then after his accident and that whole thing, he goes on he's basically determined to make right the fact that he was selling weapons to the enemy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that is a good one. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones I missed. Like in any big franchises. James Norrington, we're talking about Pirates of the Caribbean. He does redeem himself in the end by rescuing Elizabeth and sacrificing himself. I wish he didn't die, but...
I mean, in that sense, you could also say that Captain Barbossa has a redemption arc of sorts. A very loose
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
A very piratey one, where
Uh-huh.
the straight and narrow is not so straight and narrow
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah.
What else? There has to be others. Well, if we're going back to Star Wars, I would argue that, well, I don't even have to argue very hard, but in the expanded universe, Mara Jade gets a big redemption arc because she went from being the Emperor's hand to being a Jedi Master.
I mean, she was like a Sith assassin, you know?
Mm-hmm. But I also think that you could say that Han Solo has a bit of a redemption arc because he goes from scoundrel to respectable general in the rebellion.
And Lando.
And Lando, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Boba Fett is forcing a redemption arc for himself.
Yeah.
And all of Tatooine.
I'm not going to talk about Tatooine this episode. I'm not going to do it.
I know you're not. It's fine.
I will say the Boba Fett one feels like, I don't know. I'm still on the fence about like how I feel about the Boba Fett like redemption arc in general.
It feels very forced to me.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not that's just because of my like preconceived notions going into the show of what it would be, or if it's like I'm just trying to decide for myself whether or not I think my feelings are valid. So, but I would say I agree that I think it feels a smidge forced, like they're really trying to market Boba Fett as a good guy now.
Mm-hmm.
Like not all your characters have to be a good guy. Just because they're likable doesn't mean they have to be a good guy. You know, people love Darth Maul. He's definitely a bad guy.
Oh, all the whole way. To the very end.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, kind of branching away from that though, those are just some like well-known pop culture references for redemption arcs. And that's not even going into like literary like book redemption arcs too much. Besides your Mary Jade one.
And the Lord of the Rings ones are also books.
Right. They do exist though.
Oh, Edmund from the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Sell your sell your family for sweets, and then
Eustace when he turns into a dragon and then he's not.
Yes. Both Eustace Scrubb and Edmund Pevensie have incredible redemption arcs in the Chronicles of Narnia.
I do wonder if people would say that Snape has a redemption arc. I don't. You've read the books though, haven't you? Mm-hmm. But it seems to me like he wasn't so much. It wasn't a redemption arc as much as we just kind of had a better understanding of why he is the way he is. It wasn't really a redemption, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's more of a realization, I would say. And I'm going to be honest, this is controversial. I am more pro Snape. Like, if I had to pick between Snape and Dumbledore, I will pick Snape every single day. Because I have serious issues with Dumbledore.
Yeah, I mean, Dumbledore is definitely like a chess master. Like, you know, he's kind of manipulative for sure.
And using literal children.
Yeah.
So I have some serious points of contention with Dumbledore. And I know that Snape is like not like the best, but I like him better. And also he's played by Alan Rickman, who I absolutely adore.
Yeah. R.I.P. Alan Rickman. Mm-hmm. What a great guy. Mm-hmm. Great actor. So, without further ado, let's kind of get into the nitty-gritty of like the ethics of it all with the redemption arc. So my question is, do you think that everyone can be redeemed, or do you think that there comes a point where someone is past the point of no return, as it were?
Wow, we are getting philosophical on the pod today. Okay. We've talked about this a little bit. So it's
a hard question.
It is a hard question. I feel a cognitive dissonance in myself. And that, like, my Christian upbringing and my faith tells me that everyone can be redeemed because we are not the ones doing the redemption, right?
Right.
Like, it's not an act of myself that redeems myself or other people. It's an outside force, deus ex machina, that is...
Literally, yeah.
Exactly. That is correcting the wrongs that have been done. So in that sense, yes, everyone can be redeemed. But if we're talking about, like, person to person, can an abuser be redeemed to their abusee? I don't think so. I think that that's something you have to cut ties and walk away. And that's the healthy option. That doesn't mean that... You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that's something I wanted to touch on too. You kind of, that's a good segue. It's not, and that this is something that when I was both researching this and something that I've just kind of thought before, and I've seen other people talk about this, and like I've read posts about this in the past too, but it's not so much about forgiving them for what they did, because there are some things I think that us humans, there are things that we have a real tough time forgiving, like genocide, slavery, sexual assault. Like there are things that can happen to a person that is just like, I don't care what you say or what you do, I'm not going to forgive you. However, that isn't to say that the person who did those wrong things can't be rehabilitated and change and do better going forward. I think in that way there can be redemption in what they do going forward, but I don't think that necessarily means that there has to be forgiveness from the people that they wronged. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like a very tame example of this would be like if you had a high school bully that was like awful to you, and then you both grew up different colleges, whatever, ended up in the same town again at some point, and you hear about them like through other people. Like you're not necessarily going to associate with them, but you hear from other people like, oh, they're really good at what they do. They've really got a knack for this. They're a great family person. Like they care a lot about their kids and their spouse, whatever. Like those, it feels like that can't be possible when you're thinking about it through the lens of someone who was bullied by that person. But the truth of humans is that we do grow and change as we age. And like the 16-year-old version of me is not the same as the 30-year-old version of me. And I would hope the same is true for them. So both of those versions of that person can exist. And just because they were a bully in high school doesn't mean that they're like a terrible parent. They might be, but I'm just saying that they don't have to be. So I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, just that.
It's a very low stakes example.
Yeah, especially when, well, not to the person who's being bullied. It's you know.
Right. No. Absolutely. Sorry, that was not at all to like diminish.
Yeah. No,
like,
I know what you mean.
Bullying or anything. Just I wanted to lower the stakes from like essay and like murder.
Lowering it down from like Holocaust to schoolyard bully is yeah. I see what you mean. I think it's just, and it's hard being the person who was on the receiving end, because it's like you've seen what this person is capable of doing, and there's just a trust that's been broken that you can't really earn back no matter what. There's always going to be some kind of lingering, doubt or conception about this person that they are bad,
Right.
So yeah, that is something I don't think you can really get over, or like it's not fair for the abuser to ask for or demand forgiveness for past wrongs, like depending on the severity of them. Because it's not like you can't force someone to forgive you for something,
That doesn't mean that you shouldn't apologize and ask for forgiveness, but you can't demand it.
Yeah, you can't. If they don't, you can't get mad at them, is what I mean.
Right. Okay.
If they don't, you don't get to throw a fit and try to make them the bad guy, because that is classic, like, narcissistic manipulator behavior. And it's like, well, I guess you've learned
Right.
nothing.
Right. So turning that to like a book perspective, I want to talk about Boromir a little bit, because I think he's a good example of, back home, he was not seen as someone who needed redemption, right? Because he was highly motivated to act in behalf of Gondor and to protect his people. But in the application of what that looked like in the Fellowship, it made him like seem and behave in a way where he was just like power hungry and just like wanted the ring, and he was like determined that it could save Gondor, which, you know, as the reader and other members in the Fellowship knew, like, that was not how that would have played out. But that's what he thought and what he wanted. And then, and he kind of acts like a jerk for a lot of the Fellowship of the Ring. And then it ends with him, like, confronting Frodo, and then realize in the midst of that confrontation that he is, like, gone off the deep end. And he's very apologetic and feels awful and realizes how wrong he has been. And then the last moments of his life are trying to, like, earn back some honor for that moment of weakness. So I think he's an interesting example of, like, the redemption arc he had was fairly small. It wasn't spanning over, like, multiple books. He wasn't guilty of, you know, mass genocide or anything like that. And he had good motives, but it came out poorly. So, and I think that kind of ties into what you were saying too.
Yeah, and he's interesting too, because it's like he was so bound by his sense of duty and honor that he was willing to put those responsibilities over everything. And that just totally warped. And when you combine that with the fact that his dad, the person who was giving him the orders, was corrupt because of the Palantir, like, external forces, and then the ring was there, which was also corrupting Boromir, it was just the perfect storm. And like, no matter how, like, honorable or focused on your doing your duty for your father and your country, those can be twisted for nefarious purposes. But for him, especially with his redemption arc, it just felt like it was just so, like, these are things you don't appreciate when you're watching the movie as a kid, but then you get older and you're like, oh wow, that's impactful, because, like, he was attacking one of the hobbits and then he dies saving the hobbits, or trying to save the hobbits, and he's not even successful. And it's just like, oh, it like, part of me feels like too little too late, even though I know it worked out in the end.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that I want to talk about too, because Boromir died. I've heard it said I've heard it said before that there comes a point where the only way a character can be redeemed, if they've done something so dastardly or so evil, sometimes the only way the character can be redeemed is by an extreme act of self-sacrifice for the greater good, usually ending in their loss of life, such as Darth Vader throwing the Emperor down the shaft. He dies. There are other examples, like, actually Spike in Buffy, even though he gets his own show, so he doesn't, like, spoilers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but Spike gets like, disintegrated by a rock thing for the greater good at the end of the show, and dies. Jaime Lannister, at the end of the show, he dies, even though he dies because he
unredeemed
backpedaled
himself.
Yeah. Loki, at least in Avengers Infinity War, dies via Thanos. Kylo Ren dies.
He's one that I really think that they didn't have to go that route. I think he could have been saved But
I think that, because the thing is with him, he is not quite up there with like Darth Vader, but he still
no.
killed all of the other Jedi trainees at Luke's temple. He still contributed to the building of the Starkiller base and like destroyed an entire solar system. Like
Yeah.
he's still definitely up there with like he's done some very, very, very bad things. So I understand why someone would think that he had to die. Like it's like how would that have gone if he had lived and gone and like just hung out with Poe and Finn at the end of the movie?
Okay.
Even though he had tortured Poe in the first one.
Okay. But also, I want to break away from Kylo for just a second and look at Anakin. Part of what makes Darth Vader so compelling is that after he killed all the Jedi and builds the Empire with Palpatine, all of that, he's literally like part of the head top tier of the Empire for 18 years before he even like considers turning. But if the confrontation on Mustafar between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker had gone differently, and Obi-Wan could have convinced him that there was another path, I don't think that Anakin would have had to die to be redeemed.
That's an interesting thought experiment. Do you think that, say Anakin showed a moment of like regret, do you think that Obi-Wan would have taken him back, or do you think Obi-Wan would have seized the opportunity and just taken him out?
I think that Obi-Wan has such hope in people. I think that Obi-Wan went into that confrontation hoping that he could save Anakin.
Yeah.
I don't think he went into that with the intention of killing him. I think he wanted it to end differently than it did.
I guess for me, I think it's flipped in my head. I think that he went expecting to kill him, but he was hoping beyond all hopes that maybe not.
Well,
whereas I think maybe in your head it's flipped.
Yeah. Slightly different coin, but same thing.
Yeah.
I just think that had that confrontation gone differently, I don't know, Anakin was so far gone in that he couldn't even see reason with Padme. Like, he even thought that she had betrayed him.
And
but
Obi-Wan watched video footage of him killing kids, you know?
Right. And with Kylo Ren, we see how conflicted he is the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Kylo Ren in the last trilogy is like between episode 2 and 3 Anakin. Like, he's done terrible things, but I think he's still like in a place where he's feeling conflicted and he knows that it's not right, but he's like just like trying so hard to prove himself. Like, he's got this huge like thing that he just wants to prove that he's worthy of something. Okay, sidetrack. I am conflicted about Kylo Ren anyway because I don't understand his motivation as a character. It wasn't made clear why he ended up the way he did, whereas with Anakin, there's a very clear, like, I know exactly what got him from A to B, and it was terrible, but I understand it. And I don't understand that with Kylo Ren.
There's a lot of filling in the gaps with your own imagination that you have to do with Kylo Ren's character that you don't have to do with Darth Vader, because Darth Vader has 6 movies.
Right.
To be fair.
Yes.
But I mean, all we know about Kylo Ren is, Luke had a bad dream about him, so Luke tried to kill him. And then he woke up and didn't like that and went nuts.
I think fair.
I think yeah. But I think that it is explained more. I think there's like some Kylo Ren comics that came out that kind of goes more into like him meeting Snoke, into that like relationship being cultivated, and like Snoke planting the seeds of doubt
Okay.
and dark side before that happened. But
But
anyway.
okay, so in The Last Jedi, they kill Snoke. He kills Snoke. And then at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, he fights the Knights of Ren. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
And then he also fights Palpatine. Like I know that after he killed Snoke, he went like deep end again. But like
Yeah.
he has been like consistently doing things. I don't know. I just think that there could have been another way for him.
To me, I by the end of The Last Jedi, I viewed him killing Snoke the way it's like he pulled off what Anakin was planning on doing in just killing the Emperor and taking over the Empire and ruling the galaxy himself. Like that's what Kylo Ren was actually doing there. And if he could also get the girl in the process, sweet, because that's what he tried to do. He wanted it all, you know. He wanted the First Order. He wanted Rey. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. And
yeah, I mean, we don't have to keep like dissecting Kylo Ren by any means.
No.
I just think that he could have had a different path. Is all.
He's one of those where the redemption arc that they gave him could have been executed better, and it would have been better if we had more of the backstory with like the Knights of Ren, with Luke's Jedi Academy. Like if we could have seen more of that, then it could have been okay. But it was kind of botched, to be fair. But yeah, and going back to that original question of is there a moment where you have to die to redeem yourself? I think I wouldn't go so far as to say they have to die. I think it's probably either death or banishment. You know, like either you have to die, like sticking it to the bad guys, or you stick it to the bad guys, help the good guys win, and then you go off like Yoda on Dagobah and just like chill for.
Okay, what about
know.
Zuko though? Because he gets a full redemption arc and then he becomes king of the Fire Nation.
I mean, Zuko has never torched a building full of children, as far as we know. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he was brought up as the prince of the Fire Nation.
Right.
But he wasn't ever in command of any military forces.
He had that.
Before, well, he had his ship. I mean, like before that, like when,
Okay.
like he never led any campaigns against the Earth Kingdom or anything.
Okay,
Now,
Uncle Iroh.
That's a character. Uncle Iroh actually has an awesome redemption arc.
He does.
And that is one. Yeah, he's interesting.
He does technically get banished, doesn't he?
Well, I haven't seen Korra. Don't spoil anything.
He's not in Korra.
I thought he shows up. Did I see a fan edit and think that it was real? I might have.
Well, I don't recall now. But my point is that he was kind of banished with Zuko.
Right. Like he was just given this rinky-dink assignment with the prince that everyone knew was going to fail. Because he lost his military... what's the word I'm looking for?
Rank.
Like his will to fight was gone.
Oh, yeah.
After his son died, and that was kind of like the turning point for him. So I guess in that one he didn't have to die, but someone very close to him did. So that's kind of an interesting take on it, where someone else's death causes them to have a redemption arc and turn away from their bad deeds. So that's kind of interesting too. I hadn't thought about that being a possible angle till just now. Because usually that would have been like a corruption arc. That kind of turns the corruption arc on its head. Where like with Anakin, when his mom dies, that's kind of like the start of it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But in this case, it kind of gets flipped, which is interesting. But yeah, back to Zuko. With him, like he doesn't do nearly as much like bad stuff as Uncle Iroh does. So I think with him, he wasn't quite to that point where he was like far enough gone where it would warrant that. If he had actually succeeded in capturing the Avatar and like delivering the Avatar to the Fire Nation and like killing him, then maybe. Or
we also
Azula is also definitely worse than Zuko. Like she's pretty nuts.
We also don't know that Iroh had, like, we can assume that, like, when we meet Uncle Iroh, he's just kind of like this, like, uncle that is like, have tea with me. Like, he's just like,
Mm-hmm.
he almost seems lazy. He's not, but like, that's kind of the perception we have of him. That's how Zuko views him.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't learn about his, like, past of being a Fire Nation general, like an esteemed Fire Nation general, until we have already fallen in love with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's revealed at the same time that we learn about, like, his son and other things that, like, explain why he is the way he is now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's another case of we got the redemption arc after it had happened and after he was already a beloved character. So,
Yeah.
kind of cheating.
Yeah.
So, if we had been
Yeah.
introduced to Kylo Ren after the fact and he was like the best Jedi Master ever, and then we learned that this had happened in his past, it would have been forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I will say also though that I love that trope. That's one of the tropes that I really enjoy is a character that has like a hidden history of like of being either like super super good or super super bad, and then it gets revealed in some dramatic way and they do something crazy, like crazy awesome. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's I eat that trope up every time.
Yes. Uncle Iroh is a
Um,
great example of that. But
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And but also with Zuko too, when like the reason that he got that scar was because he questioned his father and the military leaders in a meeting, and because he didn't like that they were like throwing their troops away and just sacrificing lives. And so even like when he gets the scar and then he gets sent on the mission to find the Avatar to redeem himself to his father, the reason he got put in that situation was because he was trying to do the right thing originally, you know.
Right.
So his is definitely different in my mind, as far as like not deserving to die for the
Right.
story. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Or be banished. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with
Yeah.
that whole dilemma, death or
Yeah.
banishment.
Interesting.
Now that's in a story, like real life. Real life things get a little hairy. Okay, like I have
Well,
to really struggle with my own like internal.
we are a podcast that talks about storytelling,
Yeah,
which is different than real life.
you're right. You're right. We can just stay in our lane and not talk about like
Yes, we can.
real world events and like our positions on like death penalty. We don't have to go there. So
No. I mean, we've certainly, like, used our real life experience, like talking about bullies and that kind of thing, and applied it to
yeah, yeah,
our reading. And I think that that is an excellent way to interpret fiction. And an expected way to interpret fiction. So,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, but I also agree with what I like relate to what you're saying in the beginning about having that like dichotomy in your brain, that like that discourse between like yes, everyone can and should be saved, and but also like don't like you.
Right.
Maybe you shouldn't be. You know, like that's very relatable.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to struggle with. I mean, I feel like at one point in my life I was far more black and white, and
Yeah,
would
me
not
too.
it would not have allowed that kind of, like, dissonance in myself.
No,
But
same.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of growing up is like like you. I was very black and white growing up, but now I'm just constantly living in a state of gray. Life is
Right.
more complicated than you thought it was as a teenager, but
Right.
you know,
Which is not to say that there aren't, like, constants, but
yeah. No, I know what you mean.
yeah.
So there's actually a book written by a guy called, well, he has a YouTube channel called Shadiversity, and he's this YouTuber who does a lot of like realism in like fantasy, whether or not like having a back scabbard for your sword is realistic. Witcher, looking at you, Witcher, whether or not that would be feasible, like that kind of thing. I mean, there are some things I'm not like gonna go out there and say like, oh, his word is gospel.
Sure.
He's just a guy. He's done his research, but he's just a guy. But he wrote a book. That was, it's called, like Chronicles of Everfall. It's like Shadow of the Conqueror, I think is what it was called. I think his Shad Brooks, I think is his name. And basically the premise of the book is he was this world's version of like big dictator, like enslaved people, killed people, all that. But then it's kind of about him flipping and trying to make up for the things that he did. So that one is, I haven't read it yet, but I want to, just because I think it's pertinent to this conversation. But just to kind of see how he tackles that. Because that's a pretty extreme example, and I want to see like if he like maybe does this author think that redemption is possible for this character, or maybe are they going to bite it in the end? Who knows? So maybe we'll see.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know. I'm curious because it seems like from your description of it, I'm like, I don't know if that character can have a redemption arc that allows them to live in the end.
I guess we'll see. I think that only the one book is out now, but I think there's going to be more. And also, it's all self-published. He kind of had a pre-established audience with YouTube, and then wrote a book and self-published it, and was pretty successful with it. So
that's awesome.
Good for him. I will say, I mean, I don't agree with all of his takes on some like pop culture stuff. I mean, there are channels out there where it seems like they'll make videos where the entire point is just to bash on something because it's popular to do so.
I feel bad because we do bash on Star Wars quite a bit, but we do also love it a lot.
No, I do. I wasn't one of the people. Well, here's the thing though. It's not so much about the Star Wars stuff. That one was, I mean, that one is across the board very controversial. Like even split down the fandom. Either you love it or you hate it. There's no middle ground. Like that's like with the sequel trilogy anyway. But I'm talking about like people hating on like Captain Marvel and Shang-Chi and like just like things. It's like, guys, come on. Like why you were going into this wanting to hate it, and so that's what's happening. But anyway, yeah, so I want to read that now. But yeah. That's all I got for redemption arcs. We got philosophical on the pod.
We did. It was good. We should do it more often.
Yeah. Well, next time we can talk about corruption arcs, and you can lead that one.
Oh. I don't feel like I'm as equipped to talk about that as you are, just because I have not read The Silmarillion.
No. Oh, yeah. Snap. You're right.
Which I think of as being kind of a prototype for... I mean, it's not a prototype, but like it's a pretty in-depth discussion on corruption.
Yeah.
But I could talk your ear off about Gollum. And Frodo and Bilbo and Sam. And
what I'm hearing is you need to just
bears.
read The Silmarillion.
Yeah, you're right.
Go hang out with... let's see, who has a really awesome corruption arc in that show? Oh, I forget his name. He lives in Gondolin, though, and he, like, betrays everyone.
In that show?
It's
you
awesome.
mean that book?
I said show? I meant book.
You
Sorry.
said show.
Maybe I was thinking about Rings of Power for a second.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I'm excited about that. Super excited about that.
Yes.
Anyway. Also, the Kenobi show is in, like, 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. Anyway, let's wrap it up. So, that's Redemption Arcs, y'all. Tune in next time to hear about something. You'll find out that day. But until next time, go read something cool.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Later.
Bye.